Did you guys know that there are 450 Bible translations in English, at least? That is a lot. That is a lot of different Bible translations. Which one should you use? It's actually a good question. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you should use the translation that I use most of the time. If this is your first time to my channel, my name is Cameron Bertuzzi, and I'm exposing you to the intellectual side of Christian belief. I'm so glad that you're here. And at the end of this video, actually, I'm going to be doing a huge giveaway. Like today, I'm giving away something today. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video to see what we're talking about. And I'm just going to jump right in. So the version of the Bible, the English version that I recommend that you use is the English Standard Version. And I actually had some people on my Facebook page earlier saying, what kind of translation are you going to be talking about? And someone even said, please don't use the English Standard Version. I think it's a great version. I'm going to give 5 reasons why I think that you should use it too. So the first reason is that the publishing team is huge. Maybe you don't know this. Maybe you don't know that the publishing team for the English Standard Version is comprised of more than 100 different people. I'm actually going to read from the esv.org website. This is in the preface to their version. It says, quote, "The English Standard Version publishing team has included more than 100 people. The 14-member translation oversight committee benefited from the work of more than 50 biblical experts serving as translation review scholars and from the comments of more than 50 members of the advisory council, all of which was carried out under the auspices of the Crossway Board of Directors. This 100-plus member team shares a common commitment to the truth of God's Word and to historic Christian orthodoxy and is international in scope, including leaders in many denominations." So I think that's a really good reason to trust this translation. It wasn't based on the work of one individual. It was based on the work of many different Christian thinkers and scholars. So that's a good reason to use this one. The second reason is that it's scholarly. What do I mean by that? Well, we're still learning and we're still finding new manuscripts of the Bible, basically, of the Greek, of the New Testament. The Old Testament is pretty much settled. There's not a whole lot of disagreement about what manuscripts we should use there. The Dead Sea Scrolls that we found actually support basically the manuscripts that everyone uses, the Masoretic text. But when it comes to the New Testament, there's a few differences there. So most people, most versions, most older versions of the Bible, of the New Testament, use the Byzantine manuscript tradition, which is actually huge. There's a whole lot of different manuscripts that we found from the early first few centuries after Jesus. They're using this tradition, the Byzantine tradition. The ESV and other newer translations draw from the Alexandrian manuscript traditions. And these are a little bit, they're smaller. So they have less content, basically. And it's not a whole lot less content. The difference is actually, I was watching a scholar earlier talk about this. The difference is, if you could put all of the differences between the manuscript traditions of the Byzantine and the Alexandrian manuscripts, would equal less than half of one page. Like if you were to type out a document, the differences would be less than a page of differences. So there's actually very small differences between the two. So I think in a lot of these discussions, it's kind of blown out of proportion, the differences between this manuscript tradition and this manuscript tradition. And as I was looking into it, there's actually arguments on both sides that are not bad. Let me pop over here and make sure that everyone can hear me. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think people blow out of proportion the differences between the two manuscript traditions. Nevertheless, I think the ESV is really cool because they draw on some of the most recent evidence and some of the most recent archaeological evidence as well. This is again from their website. The translation team has benefited greatly from the massive textual resources that have become readily available recently, from new insights into biblical laws and culture, and from current advances in Hebrew and Greek lexicography and grammatical understanding. So that's one of the reasons why I like this translation, is because it's based on the most recent evidence. And that's really cool. And like I said, the differences between the manuscript traditions, Byzantine versus Alexandrian, I think are blown sort of out of proportion. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. So the third reason is that it's a word-for-word translation. It's a literal translation. So the ESV seeks to be sort of transparent or almost exact to the original text, sort of letting the reader see as directly as possible the structure and exact force of the original. This is actually a quote from, again, the ESV website. Quote, "The ESV seeks to be transparent to the original text, letting the reader see as directly as possible the structure and exact force of the original. So there's a difference between, scholars talk about this too, formal equivalence and functional equivalence. So here's one example. So when two people are getting married and they say "I do" at the end of their vows, if you were to translate that "I do," that would be formal equivalence. Functional equivalence would be something like translating that phrase "I do" to something like "I'm committing the rest of my life to you." So a functional equivalence is trying to get the idea across instead of just the words. But the ESV is more on the first side of this. So it's more word for word instead of thought for thought. And so every translation is going to sort of trade off between literal precision and readability. And this is another quote here. Between formal equivalence in expression and functional equivalence in communication, the ESV is no exception. Within this framework, we have sought to be as literal as possible while maintaining clarity of expression and literary excellence. So it's more word for word, and that's something that you can keep in mind as you're looking at these different translations. Something like the NIV is going to be more thought for thought, and especially the New Living Translation, that's going to be even more thought for thought. So you're going to see a lot more going on. Here's another sort of analogy to help understand what's going on. So if there's like 20 words in Greek, the ESV is trying to match that to like 20 words in English. But the New Living Translation, while there might be 20 words in Greek, they might translate that and try to get to the idea of what's being communicated. And they might use 30 words to communicate the same idea. And so that's a kind of understanding of word for word versus thought for thought. Something like the Message Bible is a whole lot more thought for thought, and they take a lot more liberty in their translation. And so that's why some people have an issue with that, is because they might be people think they're going too far with their translation. Yes, we can understand what the thought is behind this, but you're going way too far with it. That's what some people say about the Message Bible. So another cool thing, and this is in line with the literal translation of the ESV, is that gender language is preserved. This is another quote from the ESV website. Quote, "For example, anyone replaces any man where there is no word corresponding to man in the original languages." Sorry, I lost my spot here. Is regularly used where the original language is referred to both. Oh, sorry. Let me start over. I'm gonna read the whole quote again. "For example, anyone replaces any man where there is no word corresponding to man in the original languages, and people rather than men is regularly used where the original language is referred to both men and women. But the words man and men are retained where a male meaning component is part of the original Greek or Hebrew. Likewise, the word man has been retained where the original text intends to convey a clear contrast between God on the one hand and man on the other hand, with man being used in the collective sense of the whole human race." See Luke 2:52. The basic idea is that when gender terms are used, they preserve that in the English Standard Version. Some newer translations will try to blur the lines when gender is used in the Greek. And so English Standard Version doesn't do that because, again, it's literal. It's trying to get to what the original author was saying, not necessarily what is politically correct. So that's one cool thing about the ESV, if you really care about what the actual words say. The fourth reason, let's get on to the fourth reason why you should read the ESV, is that it can be updated. And this is sort of a minor reason, but it is kind of cool that the language, as we go on, English can, sometimes terms will change meaning over time. When we're thinking about language more generally, language does transform. It does, different words are used in different ways. And so the English Standard Version can be updated, basically, and remain the English Standard Version. But between the King James Version and the New King James Version, there can't be any differences there. You either are reading the King James, or you're reading the New King James, the ESV can be updated, depending on how the language is being updated currently. So that's really cool. All right, next one. It uses familiar language. So the ESV is basically the great-grandchild, if you didn't know this, of the King James Version. So it was the King James Version, then it went to the American Standard Version, then the New American Standard Version, and now it's kind of the ESV. And they all kind of draw from the same language, same phrases, phraseology. I don't even know if that's a term. Here's another quote from the ESV website. The words and phrases themselves grow out of the Tyndale King James legacy, and most recently out of the RSV, with the 1971 RSV text providing the starting point for our work. Archaic language has been brought into line with current usage, and significant corrections have been made in the translation of key texts. And so here's a bonus reason. It's really easy to read. The ESV, if you've ever read it, is super easy to read, especially if you're a native English speaker. Super easy to understand, super easy to read. And the reason why I didn't include that in the list of 5 is because that's more of a practical reason. Practical reasons are still reasons, but I wanted to focus on like the kind of logic of the 5 reasons why you should use this translation. But that's a really good reason, I think, if it's easy for you to read, you're going to be more inclined to read it. And reading the Bible in any translation is better than not reading the Bible. And so that brings me to my last slide here. The best translation is the one that you actually read. I think that's important too. So if you're reading any translation, that's really cool. And that's important. And you should be doing that as a Christian, if you are a Christian. I think you should be doing it as a non-Christian as well, because it's so important. But anyways, the best translation is the one that you actually read. So that's all that I have as far as the 5 different reasons why you should read the ESV. Let me also mention that, and a lot of scholars will talk about this, a lot of Bible scholars will say, hey, you should be reading multiple translations. So don't just stick with the ESV. Look at other translations. You can look at the New King James Version. I think that one's actually not too bad. And it preserves a lot of the language that you're probably familiar with if you grew up a Christian, because a lot, like, I'm going to use the term boomers. A lot of boomers, like, for some reason, the King James Version of the Bible, they like the terminology. It sounds religious, maybe. I don't know. I don't know why they love it so much, but they do. And so the New King James Version retains a lot of the same language, and it's really cool. But anyways, the point is that you should read multiple different translations. Don't just stick with one. Look at, in a lot of these Bibles, like if you open an English Standard Version of the Bible, they'll have a preface on their philosophy of translation. And so you can kind of read, like, what was the thinking behind this translation? I don't think that any of them are intending to sort of introduce things into their Bible or into their translation that wasn't meant to be there in the first place. But there is a different translation philosophy going on that's important, so you can read that in the preface of pretty much every translation that you get. Also want to mention that there's like I mentioned at the very beginning of this, there's 450 different English translations of the Bible. Like, some languages don't have any. So we are very, very fortunate to have as many translations as we have and be able to sit here and just like choose which one we like the best. Like, this one is most accurate to this series of manuscripts that are based on the earliest evidence, and that's why I choose the ESV. But a lot of people, like, they have one version in their language, and like that's all they have. So I think we need to be a little bit more grateful for what we have. All right, let me get on to the giveaway. So I'm giving away something today, and you can only get it if you do this today. So what I'm giving away is this English Standard Version of the Bible, and it's goat skin. It was actually in the thumbnail of this video. Super, super nice. You can see how sort of, I don't know if floppy is a good term to use, but it's very nice. The leather is just gorgeous. Anyway, so this is slightly used. I think there's a couple places where there's some underlines that were used in pencil, which those can be erased if you want to. But it's super, super nice. And this retails new, I think it's on sale right now for about $160. And so without the sale, I think it's around $250, $270. Super, super nice, guys. It's a goat skin. Okay, so the way to enter and to win this, you can, again, win this right now, today, if you're watching this live, or if you watch this today. What is today? Today is the 19th of February. So February 19, 2020. This is only available today. So if you're watching this in the future, sorry. Stick around. We have other things going on. But today, if you want to win this, you can head over to patreon.com/capturingchristianity. If you sign up for any tier, and if you're an existing patron, you increase your patronage, you can automatically be entered to win this Bible. And today's the only day that you can do this. So if you sign up today on Patreon, you're going to be entered to win. And I'm going to ship it to somebody like I said, today. Or I'm going to choose it today and do it tomorrow. Ship it out tomorrow. Whatever. But it's happening today. So also want to talk about, I mentioned in another live stream that we're starting a Spanish version of our channel of Capturing Christianity. Still don't know what name I'm going to use. But I'm working right now with a few different people trying to figure out how the best way to go about this is. So anything that you do right now on Patreon is going toward this new initiative of starting a Spanish channel. I wish I had it queued up here so I could show you a little taste of what that's going to look like. But that is where your money is going right now. And I'm so excited about this. I hope you guys are excited about it too. As I've been posting more about the Spanish stuff, I'm seeing more interest from other apologists to start a Spanish channel. I think that the Spanish community, Spanish speaking community, is so underserved when it comes to apologetics. And we need someone who is devoted to that and pushing out content in a language that they can understand. Spanish is the number 2 language in the world. English is great, and that's what I grew up, that's my native language. But we need to be expanding. We need to be thinking about other people that are just sort of outside of our little bubbles. So anyways, that is where your money's going. So if you sign up today, you can win this, and you can also support a great cause. So that's what I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of this live stream. Let me know in the comments. Also, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you like this type of content. Let me know, because I don't do a whole lot of theology type stuff, and where I'm like talking about translations of the Bible and theology. I don't do a whole lot of that. I'm more like the philosophy guy. But if you want to see more theology, let me know in the comments. Like, go down in the comments right now and let me know, hey, I really like this video. I want to see more of it. Let me know in the comments. If you're in the live chat right now, you can do that too. But let me know in the comments if you appreciate this kind of content and you want to see more of it. And like I said, subscribe to my channel so you can get updates when I go live and do other videos. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you later.